Hey, Ryan, it's great to have you on the Fox Den podcast here.
Awesome, Jeremy. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we get started here, I just want to ask a little bit about your background, about what your career is in, what your education's in.
Yeah, so my background, I was a comms undergrad. Like most comms undergrads, I had no idea what to do with that.
Uh-huh.
Went through the whole let's study for the LSAT because I don't know what else to do. Like every other lawyer, I don't know what to do. Let's go be a lawyer. I'm fairly sharp. They make money, right? I was like, this is a terrible idea. And
Sure.
that was about the time, 2007, 2008, that the online world was getting going. And I just found it incredibly intriguing, the intersection of business and the internet. And so I applied to some graduate school in business and marketing and went to graduate school for marketing primarily. And then started writing online as a way to separate myself from other smart graduate students who were really honing in on the 4Ps, project manager for Procter & Gamble, those type people. And I said, what can I do differently? And so I got really into kind of the intersection of sports and business and social media, and actually started at a small sports tech company in Charlotte.
Nice.
My career's evolved in a bunch of different ways, as everybody's does. And now I'm actually in business development and fundraising for the #1 cancer institute in the country, MD Anderson, here in Houston. So,
Wow, that's got to be a gratifying, awesome experience.
It's phenomenal. It's awesome to get up every day and go to work for something you believe in. And then not only that, just to when you have those discouraging days, it's really easy to put things in perspective really quick when you realize, hey, I get the privilege of raising money for people who are battling for their lives in some cases.
Absolutely. And so that brings me to the next thing I want to discuss pretty seamlessly here. What got you into this world of, we could say, motivational Twitter, right? It's a whole network, a whole corner of Twitter that involves really empowering people to pursue their goals and their best self.
Yeah, so I think you have to go back to the onset of me getting on Twitter in 2008, 2009, when it was literally people sharing pictures of their cereal, right?
Yeah.
Bizarre. And then, my Twitter use has evolved the way in which my life has evolved, I guess. I've always kind of been a self-improvement junkie, and it's becoming more nuanced and more refined as I go.
Right.
But if you go back and look at my old tweets, it's a lot of all this social media stuff. And then it was healthcare stuff when I first started working for MD Anderson. And I just got, I started to understand those things in a way that I didn't need to tweet about them anymore.
Right.
And then it became more of I am saying these things to myself. These are reminders to myself. And it just happened that it started resonating with other people. And then I think, it gets a little formulaic, but you start to understand what is resonating with your audience, and you try to give them the types of things that they gravitate to, while simultaneously, most days it's still these are things that I want to remember. These are messages to myself. And if they benefit these other 20,000 people that follow me, that's awesome.
Right. Absolutely. I can understand that. And the adage, teaching is the best way to learn something new, is always accurate, right? I mean, you're reminding yourself while also helping to teach others.
Yeah, without question. And for me, I read a lot. So when I read a lot, how do I think about what I read? I capture those notes. I curate those notes. I share those notes. That whole process, by the time it's done, now I'm going to recall what I read.
Right.
And so that's part of it for me as well.
Absolutely. I think you hit on something important there. Active reading, right? A lot of people might not have been taught that. I remember in high school there was this book, and it was hilarious because it's called How to Read a Book. It's well, if you can read the book, you don't really need it, right? But it was more about how to interact and engage with the written word versus how to actually phonetically read.
Right. And so if people are wanting to get better at that, the two best resources I would point them to. Or Shane Parrish at Farnham Street has a handful of articles about how to read a book, how to take notes, how to distill that information. And then Maria Popova, who writes at Brain Picker, is just a prolific reader. And I think she reads about a book a day and then posts like 3 blog posts a day about all the stuff that she's read. So yeah, obviously she's reading and recalling a lot of stuff. And so both of them have a handful of articles on these are the ways in which we read, these are the way we take notes, and this is the way we distill that information.
That's such a great conversation to have. Yeah. Maria Popova, what a prolific writer for sure. Something that you posted about recently, and this is such a good segue here, is about relationship difficulties, the 4 horsemen of relationship apocalypse, which for listeners refers to the work of John Gottman. So the Gottmans, so John and his wife, are excessively decorated and very studied researchers on marriage and relationship, right? And so they determined that there are these 4 errors that people may make characteristically and that really signify their relationship is coming to an end. So that's something I respect about your Twitter, about your Twitter. Essentially, your account is you draw on stuff that psychologically is pretty well studied, instead of just inventing things and saying, well, this worked for me, so it's going to work for you no matter what.
Yeah. And again, I think a lot of that is because it is a resultant of the things that I'm reading. As I read, I'm scribbling notes. I'm like, this is something that I want to recall. Typically, it's already been in an Evernote document or in a commonplace book before it ever ends up on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And so I try to have it researched. The trick with Twitter is it's hard to always attribute this to the right people. So typically if people ask, I try to point them in the right direction to get more information, but that's always the trick with Twitter. But
right.
But yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to these are the things that I'm thinking about and working on in my own life. Obviously, I think your marriage is one of the most important things that you can continually be improving. And so you're constantly reading and thinking about, how do we continue to be good teammates and excel in this world together. And his research is obviously, to your point, very renowned. And so I was exploring that, and my wife and I have a ebook on 6 ways to become better teammates in marriage. And so I'm always reading and thinking about whether we're encountering those problems or not. What are other problems people are encountering?
Right.
How is our resource something that would help them?
I think that's a beautiful point. For listeners out there, you and your wife tag team. Like, she'll write some articles, and you will too, for your website, right? That's a big thing.
Yeah. So we write at dialedinmen.com, and that's something that we really started it after we had our son.
Okay.
And we saw what it's like I, for one, am a little concerned about how, and I know how this sounds, but how it is right now to navigate the world as a male.
Okay.
And
talk about that. Yeah.
Let's be honest. Every race and gender, et cetera, has different challenges with which to navigate. But there are certain things that are going on societally that I think men are struggling with. And so I had a son. These are these challenges that are kind of scary to me. We're presumably over-diagnosing ADHD at a young age. 77% of all suicides are committed by men. This is on the rise, despite the fact that we have more wealth and healthiness and things that we've ever had historically. So these are just things that we're thinking about as we raise a son in the world. And so Dialed In Men was a way for us to say, these are things that we think would benefit him. As a result of that, we think these will also seeing a common theme here. These things will also benefit other people. And so instead of just writing a journal that we give to him, here it is on the internet that when he's ready, he could refer to it. Or if, gosh forbid, anything ever happened to me or to my wife, here's a repository of articles that we feel like would help you navigate this world. So that's kind of the mentality behind that.
Well, so much to unpack there. So for one, I love that you're talking about a commonplace book. I wanted to jump back to that. I was just speaking about that with somebody else. It's essentially like a journal where you put stuff in that you discover, take notes, whatever. It's what people did before they could write a note to themselves in their phone, right? That's what that is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and the problem with mine, I originally got the idea of a commonplace book from Ryan Holiday, prolific writer. He does note cards. There's other people that do journals. My problem with my commonplace book is that it is note cards. It is a physical journal. It is Evernote. I'm not really consistent about the way I'm capturing all this information, but it is all captured.
That's funny because sometimes it can be difficult to know what medium to use at the time, right? You kind of have to use whatever you got nearby, whether it's Evernote. Where I like Evernote a lot. Because whatever happens, you can sync up on the same note, whether or not you're on your phone or the computer or whatever. So that's a good one for me.
Yeah, I love Evernote for searchability too. I mean, if I'm like, hey, marriage, now 17 articles that I've archived come up, right? Whereas if I'm flipping through note cards, I do have them organized and hashtagged, if you will. But it's much trickier. And then even trickier in a physical journal. The thing about a physical journal I like, and I'll typically reserve some of the really best, most impactful stuff for that, is just the fact that the act of writing it down and revisiting it keeps it kind of top of mind, versus sometimes things will get buried in Evernote that, unless I'm searching for those things, it may not come back to the surface for a long time.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And when you write the ideas down, and there's kind of a cross-pollination among different concepts, that can be very helpful. And you might not get that as much in Evernote or wherever. I mean, if you keep things organized by topic, that can be great for actual itinerary of which topics to discuss, what subjects to address. But sometimes like a commonplace book, you can see one thing and then another, and then you think, oh, I hadn't thought those things related before, if you're just all kind of jumbling it together. So it's like there's a cool optimal ratio there of stuff that's related and not.
Exactly. And I think that's the end goal, right? Is that we are slowly weaving the fabric together to create a lattice work of mental models and ideas that we can call upon at any given time as we try to navigate the world, right?
Yes, absolutely. So let's hit the topic of the male-dominated world of suicide. Not one that anyone really wants to be the high demographic in. What do you attribute that to? What kind of causes have you experienced or seen or just noted, this might be something that is relevant?
Yeah, so this is tricky because just being completely candid, it's a bit outside the scope of my expertise, right? I can only speculate. Sure. I think a big one is loneliness. And I think we're seeing that a lot, right? I think generationally, we don't stay together near the way we used to.
Nope.
I think if you look at where a lot of these suicides take place, they're very prevalent in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Places where, men may be truck drivers and not see families for long stretches of time.
Yep.
Or they just live in a remote area of the country and they don't have mental health resources.
Right.
Also, part of it is just that men, whether it's testosterone or the physical act of being a male, they are more likely to go through with suicide than a woman. So I think there are other things that are contributing to this. These are the ones I'm more comfortable saying. I think the research supports this.
Yes.
I definitely think there is an element too of online and social in which we're comparing ourselves to each other. We're comparing our day 1 to other people's day 30. I don't know, if you do that, you can compare in a way that motivates you, or you can compare in a way that makes you envious or 100%. Make you feel less about yourself. I think too often we're doing the latter, and that's a scary thing. And I think this one's more of an issue with kids versus maybe older men. but I think we're trying too hard to use the internet to replace in-person conversations. I think that's really dangerous.
Yes, we are. Wow. Yeah, I definitely understand you're saying you're not an authority on it, but the great paradox is when you're aware of that, there's usually more wisdom there. And you nailed a lot of what we clinically know. Research shows that people now, and people can Google this, and I'll try to attach some articles, the URLs to the description of the podcast when I release it. But millennials, or that dreaded word, that generational cohort, is more likely. So a lot of millennials, like 25%, I believe, it's either 20 or 25, say that they have only like a few, either no close friends or just a few. I think it's that they don't have any. So, there's such a need for that now. And I think what makes this generation different is there's a false sense of security that, well, since I have these people connected to me on Facebook, since I'm friends with people from high school, since I'm friends with people from college on Facebook, that maybe I can stay in touch with them. And, they're there if I want to talk, right? But there's not an active, so there's a passive approach to socialization versus an active one, right? When you think that something's right there, it's like, okay, so maybe not fostering that. But in previous eras, if you wanted to get to know what was going on in someone's life, you couldn't just voyeuristically look at their Facebook profile. You had to actually ask. So it kept social skills engaged.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. The other thing I just thought about while you were clarifying that is that, I think the other thing that's challenging, maybe more so for men than women, I don't know if the research supports this or not, so I'll say that I'm speculating, is that I do not think that humans in general were designed to sit down for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And I think there's something to be said for, I think as knowledge workers become more prevalent, and who knows, some machines may phase us out of this too, but right now, so many people are getting up, they're going to work, they're sitting down at a desk for 8 hours a day, they're going home, they're doing a few things, and then they're sitting on their couch for another 3 or 4 hours a day.
Yes.
And I just think and even in that knowledge work, we're going to meetings, we're writing emails, sometimes we're writing reports, et cetera, but a lot of times we're shuffling deck chairs.
Yes.
I think what we're missing a little bit, maybe even more so with men than women, is this craftsmanship, like the careers and the jobs that men used to have, and they're not coming back. So we got to figure out what that looks like. But that I did this and I made this, like for me, like people always think this is weird. It's so gratifying to mow my lawn. It looks terrible. I mowed it. Now it looks awesome. I did that. Whereas you can go a whole week at work and maybe not have that feeling. And so I think, how do we bring this craftsmanship mindset back to, I think would help us.
No, I think you nailed a lot of it there. For one thing, let's hit the physiological aspect of it. So the sedentary lifestyle of an office worker, right? So we know from literature that's been confirmed again and again that exercise is extremely helpful for a lot of mental issues. Okay. So depression, obviously, first and foremost, so much research supports that. Why? Well, you increase heart rate, and we know with depression, literally a depressed physiological signature is a real hallmark there. So kind of a lack of energy. So when you go and force yourself to get excited, to get into a state of stress, but stress in a good way, right? Because with depression, it's too little stress. It's complete and total cognitive shutdown. So when you accelerate your functioning, it really helps to accelerate your thinking and change your bodily state, right? So it defies your depression's expectations that you're just going to stay in this shutdown mode. So we know volunteer work also helps with that. So let's unpack how both of those relate. For one, when you're volunteering, you can see that what you're doing matters. It's, oh, wait, I'm affecting someone else's life. Look at the cause and effect here. Okay, so that in exercise we know are really helpful for depression. And so what you have is you have this, what you're saying and what a lot of Twitter people are saying they're confirming a lot of the research and maybe providing a why even. So the why, the reason is when you don't feel connected to the fruits of your labor, there's a question of, well, okay, I get a paycheck from this, but what am I really doing? What am I influencing? How does it matter? You're right. I've had clients talk about the more abstract the job, essentially, or excuse me, I've noticed that the more abstract the job they have, the more they have to fundamentally connect. Okay, here's what I'm doing and here's how it affects something. If they don't make that effort, then there can often be that question of, well, why am I doing this?
Right. Yeah, well, and a lot of bosses, it's because it's like a parent telling a kid, it's like, because I said so. You know, I think, especially with this millennial cohort of which I am a part.
Yes, me too, yeah.
And in some ways I am, and in some ways I'm probably closer to Gen X. But, you know, I think it's so critical to tell your employees, this is what I would like you to do, and this is why. Like, you need that extra, this is why.
Right.
Because I think sometimes the why doesn't even have to be that great. They just have to know that it matters. It matters to the business, to the bottom line, to the team, to the things you're trying to accomplish.
Yes, 100%. And I think this is where individualism really has hit the absolute ceiling here, where we're told to do things because we want to do them. And so if you get a job, you're supposed to stay. The downside of that is you're supposed to stay self-motivated, essentially, unless you're really part of a team you care about. Whereas in other countries, it's, okay, I'm doing this for culture, I'm doing this for family, whatever. There's a network there, a kind of network of influence where you are taught to think, okay, this is who I'm affecting, this is what I'm doing it for. And I think that comes with its own set of negatives, like feeling locked into something and pressured, and you don't ever want to disappoint your family. I mean, there's a lot of self-explanatory things that come negative out of collectivism. But the thing is, we can see that. We're outside of it. With individualism of the Western world that we really are acculturated to, we've become more and more disconnected from just about everything, from our own work and from others. And that's supposed to be, but we label it freedom. It's supposed to be liberating. And so when we don't feel liberated by that, we blame ourselves even more and feel even more alienated. I think we need to doesn't mean you have to be socialist or you have to be completely tethered to everyone else for it, because there's a codependency there that's not healthy. But we do have to recognize that just being individual is not what we were created or evolved into, whatever way you want to take. Religious or evolutionary, we know that that's not humanity's base state.
Yeah, what a great point. And so something I've been thinking about along those lines, we would all be better off if we could take these huge movements and mindsets and find ways to marry them. And there's a happier place in the middle of all of this. You know, can we not excerpt the best things from individualism and the best things from the Eastern mindset of collectivism? Along those same lines, how many of our problems would go away if we could take some of the best ideas from the left, hey, let's take better care of each other, etc., versus some of these ideas for the right that is like, no, we don't have to, completely go to socialism. There's, I was watching those, there's the things on Netflix, like the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s.
Right.
And I was pretty young when Clinton was president.
Yeah.
But right. What I watched from that I found interesting is he actually went very, very far back towards the middle to get reelected. And I was like, that's really interesting. I'm not seeing anyone currently, on the left's purview moving at all towards the middle. So not to get into politics, but more about just like, I think more often towards the middle, the more nuanced views would just be really healthier for society versus what we're seeing with this pandering to the 2% at the very extremes.
Right. Well, and so here's the thing. I think that and I hate to demonize, it's so funny because I love Twitter, love using it to get positive thoughts out. I think that we necessarily have to use that now. The genie's been let out of the bottle, the cat's out of the bag, there's no putting it back in, so to speak. But I do think that part of the reason that extremism may be seen on both sides is there's like the curve of who's likely to post repeatedly on Twitter and be very fired up. Well, it's probably the most extreme elements of both party, right? So it's overrepresented in online media, but maybe underrepresented in the general populace, meaning less people have the extreme views out there, but more of them are vocal.
Sure. Without question. And a couple of things to unpack there. I think one is like Twitter is a terrible platform for nuance. And just, I mean, like, it's terrible. Like, you know, and somebody says something and really they want you to espouse a little bit of nuance, but at the same time, it's also like, you're being pedantic because I have 280 characters. Like, I can't, they're like, well, what about this exception to the rule? And I'm like, 280 characters, dude. Like, come on, like, go read a blog post if you want nuance. But the other thing is, like, the media has become impeccable at exploiting this lack of nuance, and they're poorly incentivized. And, you know, the one I saw the other day that was just absurd is like how Friends is a terrible show because it's too white and transphobic or whatever. Well, of course that article is going to go viral because everybody on the left's going to be like, yes, Friends, it was terrible. This is so validating. And everybody on the right's going to be like, this is the most outrageous thing I've ever read. So both sides are sharing it. So now the BuzzFeed writer that wrote it is like generating so many page views and ad dollars. Meanwhile, like, everybody's just outraged. It's absurd.
Yeah, outrage money is big business. So, and that's been the case for decades. You could probably even say centuries. I mean, you look at con men and people who could do a great job at getting people excited about things. But what's the difference now? Well, the difference is you have a wider audience, and it's more insidious because it's almost like a mimetic threat where you have just the ideas themselves. People are not just trying to play to different things that could be objectively upsetting on terms of, oh, look at this horror movie. Like, you're looking at it and you know that this is antithetical to your values or scary or something, and that's what it's for. But now, so that was kind of like on a visual level of, oh gosh, this is something that you're going to get mad about. You're going to hate watch it. But now people will do that on an ideological front too, where they'll try to work people up. And it's different because the ideas may take root and they may be something where, oh, okay, well, maybe that's true. And maybe I should be angry about this. And actually, this thing I loved is completely horrible. And it's more insidious because it's supposed to be enjoyed as something that really changes your ideology versus is just entertainment, I think.
Right. Yeah. I think, it goes back to, like, if you have these conversations with somebody in person, you're going to be able to explore a little bit more nuance, and you're going to be able to say, like, you know what, to be honest with you, I disagree with you on this, but that's okay because I still agree with you on these 7 other things. Whereas now it's like, oh, you see who they voted for, and all of a sudden you hate this person, and it's just wild.
Right. So I want to highlight I want to take a moment here to pivot and highlight your extremely relevant texts, tweets about mindfulness. That tends to be a theme that you revisit to great effect, obviously, in discussing when you're doing one thing, do it thoroughly, do it completely, be immersed in it. And when you're doing another, do that. Talk to me about what's inspired you to tweet. So particularly on that, if you can maybe look at some things.
Yeah, for me, I think it boils down to just something that I've been exploring in my own life because I find it to be challenging. My job entails me being online a lot. There's a lot of distractions on there. I also am horrible about and have always been very bad about, like, oh, there's all of these smart people saying all of these amazing things, and I need to read them all, which is absurd, right? But at the same time, it's like, it's an insatiable thing. I can never get enough. And so I'm trying to move away from that. And so a lot of times I'm reading or thinking about mindfulness and how that impacts my own life, and presumably other people are encountering these same things as well. And so for me, and the research supports, like, multitasking is a false god. Like, you can't do it. women can do it a little bit better than men, but none of us can do it at all, really and truly. And so I just try to think about, if I'm working on something, let's close all these other browser windows so we cannot get distracted, and let's just focus on what we're working on. And in fact, I've been preaching about this, and I tweeted about having a dopamine fast the other day.
I saw that.
Because this it's a drug, right? The same as, I need that next hit of people liking this stuff. Or how can I craft this perfect tweet that everybody will like and will get lots of retweets? And it's silly. And so I'm like, this is not the most important thing in my life by any stretch of the imagination. And so I said, I'm talking about these dopamine fasts. Let's do this. And so a couple of weeks ago, my birthday fell. I had a day off of work. The timing worked out. And I said, I'm taking a week off. And I took a week off, and I didn't think about Twitter at all, Instagram, Facebook, none of that.
Okay.
I queued up some podcasts. I did listen to podcasts. Those probably count as social media. But to me, the longer form stuff, I'm intently just either on a walk and listening to that, or listening to that and taking notes. So I read books. I read some long form articles. I watched a little TV. I had a drink and visit with my wife. I gave my kids my undivided attention. I just went on exploratory walks with nothing at all, just to listen to nature and watch squirrels and birds. And it was just a phenomenal week. It's in fact something that I will probably do much more often.
I love it. So there's a lot to look at there. The dopamine fast, that's great. What it really is it's the that's a great term for it. It's the instant gratification withdrawal. I mean, that's beautiful, because you are teaching yourself to get back involved in things that are fruitful and aren't manipulatively influencing behavior for likes, which I know you've tweeted about before. Is like, there's nothing innately wrong with wanting likes, but what is it all for? That's another thing, is for listeners out there, you tweet a lot about understanding the reasons for our behavior, which developing insight, developing mindfulness and awareness of what motivates us is an essential first step for people to really change their behavior and understand if something is wrong, and if they're just not feeling up to their potential in life. Is, well, what are you doing? What behaviors are you taking for granted as automatic and just what you do? Because there's probably something there that can be changed. It's probably a waste of time. And now, obviously, it doesn't mean you have to optimize every minute of every day because I've had clients like that too. I've had clients that are very perfectionistic and very high performance, and they get neurotically so, where it's like maybe you need a weekend of camping or something to kind of just. Yeah, no,
I'm that type A person, right? Like, totally. So,
but in my experience, I've seen that people often can go into freeze mode when they have this abundance, this surplus of absolute stimulation that we can choose. So it's like, what do I read? Well, I'm overwhelmed now. I'm not going to read anything, right? A lot of people deal with that rather than soldiering ahead and getting a lot done. So for people out there, I mean, that's a natural response to being overwhelmed and not feeling able to address the threat. It's like the shutdown response. If you can't fight or flee, you will freeze. That's that response. So be aware of being overwhelmed. Pick one thing to do it mindfully. That's the biggest thing I think people can really do to reclaim their time, is to stop being overwhelmed by stimuli and to actually be mindful and an educated consumer. Because you tweeted that you tweet about the multitasking and how bad we are. It's hilarious because I've read that literature too. Women are slightly better at a very infinitesimally, statistically non-significant level, right? So that's not worth anything. It's not worth. I mean, we all fool ourselves into thinking we're better at than we are. Maybe that's due to necessity of, well, sometimes we have to multitask, but when you don't have to, don't do it. That's the big thing.
And all this rolls up to, what are you trying to accomplish in life? And please, everybody listen to this, take a week between Christmas and New Year's is a great time. Hardly anybody has to work very hard during that time. Everybody's off. Or take a week around your birthday, or a long weekend around your birthday. Take a Friday and think about, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish in life, period. And then what are the 2 to 3 things I want to accomplish this year that rolls up to accomplishing life? And then you think about, like, Twitter is so easy to be a video game, but like, if your end goal is I want more followers, what's the point of that? Why? I mean, presumably, is it because you want more likes? That's not a very good end goal. Do you want more followers because you want to impact more people's lives because you feel like you have a message that you're passionate about getting out? Great. But like, those are the kinds of things I think people need to think about, because if you're just on Twitter to play a video game and get likes, I don't think you're going to be very satisfied at the end of the day.
Right. Absolutely. So I want to also address your discussion on perfectionism and anxiety and overthinking. That I think that is going to be extremely helpful for people who maybe have a difficult time turning their minds off. So if you want to share a little bit about what you've found helpful with that, or what started your passion for that topic.
Yeah, well, in general, I think both my wife and I are very type A perfectionist type people. I think the challenge there, and the reason why it's incredibly tricky for me to talk about this, because it is both a very good thing and a very bad thing. I think my perfectionism has pushed me to succeed in ways that I might not have if I did not have it. But at the same time, you also put just insane pressure not only on yourself, but on other people. If you have such high standards that your employees, your spouse, your kids can't live up to, you're not making anybody's life better. And so I just think, I always tell people, and including people I work with, like, done is good enough a lot of times. And you can iterate on things after the fact. But, I think too often, again, it goes back to, like, life is so short. And, like, there are a handful of things that, of course, my father used to tell me, what's the thing your fathers and your grandparents always tell you? Like, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Well, good, then pick the right things to do. Start there. But then, get them done. And in fact, my boss has confronted me a couple of times about, you're over delivering too much on this. And you think that's a good thing. Woo! Whereas she's like, now if this client or, this person has grown to expect this from our team, and nobody else can deliver this because, they're not doing the same things that you're doing, or they're just busy, caught up with other things. Now all of a sudden you're putting our whole team in a predicament. And it's just something
Right.
I would not have thought of. I was like, I'm over delivering. That's awesome. That's what you should always do. No, I'm making everybody else's life harder. So.
Right, because then over delivering becomes the new delivering, and everyone can't maybe operate at that level. I understand that. I think that's a good point. That's where that collectivism comes in, though, right? Of it's about interdependence. So not independence of ruggedly individualistic all the time, and not dependence of always being attached and emotionally fused with others. It's about relying on others, but also being your own person. That's a tough happy medium to reach.
It is. I'll tell you, the middle model that's worked best for me navigating that is, will this matter in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years, right? Perfect. So like these reports or some deliverable or et cetera, that you just get all worked up over. Like, if you just take a step back and say, will I even remember this in a year? Maybe. But will I feel this anxiety about it? Doubtful. Will I remember this in 5 years? Absolutely not. Not worth it.
Yeah. Love that. That's one I use with clients often. It's a wonderful, wonderful way to keep things in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Without question.
Have you read the book Tools of Titans? It's less a book and more of a cinder block or doorstop, really, at this point.
all of Tim's books are that way.
Yeah.
I have not read all of Tools of Titans. I have read excerpts of it.
Right.
And a gentleman did a guest post on my blog who had built, and I don't even know if it still exists. I need to go check those links. But he had built a database of that book categorized by thematics. And so it was really fascinating, because if you looked up like confidence, then it would find the 3 to 5 people in that book that had talked about confidence, and it would give you their excerpts about confidence. So yeah, he had built this database out of it that was actionable for him. And he actually wrote a guest post on my blog about that. I need to go check and see if it's still up.
That would be amazing. That would really help listeners. Okay. I also want to leave ample time for you to talk about the mental health stuff facing men too. We can circle back to that because I think it's a real cause that you are passionate about, and also about trauma, because you've talked about experiencing significant trauma. In a post, you were speaking to followers who may have gone through that. So I was wondering what maybe sparked that.
You'll have to refresh my memory, because you're a trauma guy. It's not ringing a bell.
Oh, that's totally fine. So it says on here, I'll just read your tweet. It says,
sure.
Here's the thing about starting out behind or experiencing significant trauma. It breaks most people. At the very least, it causes them to give up or retreat, but the handful that emerge from the infernos of hell, they're resilient SOBs, and I bet on them every time.
Yeah. So thank you for refreshing my memory. So yeah, of course, everybody has experienced some level of trauma, right?
Right.
I am very, 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 very fortunate that I have not experienced this like traumatic things that, and you're the clinical psychologist that may tell me otherwise, right? If you were unpacking me, but I don't feel, I'm very privileged. I haven't experienced a lot of challenges in that respect. However, there are people I know that have bended to the bottom without breaking. And those people are some of the most successful people I know and can think of. Lewis Howes is a good example, lewishowes.com.
Okay.
Guy was he was very, very talented college football player, played some Arena League, had some career-ending injuries, just muddled in depression and lived on his sister's couch for a long time. And then you just see this amazing ascension to like 2 or 3 visits on the Ellen Show, very successful sole proprietorship, but experienced a lot of trauma. And so, again, I think so many people that experience trauma are, navigating life, and we never hear their stories because of where they're at and what they're doing, or they're in prison for that matter. But there are just these people that for whatever reason got to rock bottom and were able to turn it around. And they have this mentality of, I have nothing to lose anymore. I've been at the bottom. I saw what it was like. And not only that, like my back was against the wall. Either I could go to prison, I could die, or I could transform myself. And I think that's so many of us now, especially with the modern luxuries that we have in the world, we never get there. Like, we drink a little too much, or we're a little obese, or we're a little depressed. All those things are true. But yet life's still good in the scheme of things in the 21st century. Whereas these people that have been to the depths of hell, if you will, and emerged from that inferno are now just some of the most successful people because they don't have anything to lose.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we can look at the quote from Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor, that a man with meaning can survive anything. And I probably am paraphrasing that, but when people have some core, some nucleus of meaning that they can live for, that really makes a huge difference. And conversely, if someone doesn't have that, then even the smallest stressors can really prove damaging. It's almost like a mental immune system that's not there. Someone has like a mental autoimmune disorder if they have no meaning, or they are very dejected or have a negative self perspective, right? So that's one thing, is I love to talk with clients who've been through trauma about what keeps them going. And for many people, it was family or kids, or that they were taught that they had inherent value. Even, in spite of whatever happened, they knew that they mattered, that this was just something terrible that happened. It didn't say something about them. So when someone's taught that they deserve trauma or deserve pain, or whatever form that may take, then that's the more pernicious kind of viral mimetic infection of that you're worthless, you don't deserve it. That's the most damaging. And I think a lot of people who've been through trauma would agree that, okay, that's if you're broken versus this is something bad that happened, that's what makes the huge difference there.
So that's a great point. A couple of things. Two, the first one is that some of the people that are the most inspiring to me are these people that have lost a family member, lost a child, something like that. You see it all the time with, like, I lost my spouse to cancer, and now these people are the best cancer advocate, warriors, fundraisers.
Yes.
Or, you know, a mom that lost a child in a school shooting, God forbid. Mm-hmm. These people are the most amazing advocates and the most inspirational people. And
right.
you can't even fathom putting yourself in their shoes and the level of pain that they've endured. And yet here they are still marching forward. So to me, like, look at those people as role models for, like, what they lost their kid and they're doing this, like, they're having this level of impact. That's amazing to me.
Right.
And so that's one. And then I forgot where I was going after that.
It's okay. There's that, and then there's people who really don't have a lot of meaning or grounding anyway, beyond even any sort of great cause. It's like, if you're living just for your views and likes and for physical attraction, like people to like that, if anything's wrong with that, then your entire worldview is shattered.
Right. Yeah.
Horribly. Yeah.
And to your point, and this is what I was going to say, is that what you're getting at too is what I learned really from Marcus Aurelius and from some of the Stoics is basically what these guys were doing was cognitive behavioral therapy before he knew what it was called, right? Like,
yeah, 100%.
It is, you know, this is something that happened to me. This is not me. And I think if we can get better at having those conversations with ourselves, you know, you become more resilient. You become more anti-fragile because these are things that they happen to me. I can't change it, but this is what I'm going to do as a result of that. And just to start changing those conversations in your head. And it's much easier to say than do, but, you know, it's something you have to practice all the time. And I think, you know, that's why my copy of Meditations is never very far away.
Beautiful. And that's such a good way, such a good segue, because the Stoic flavor of your profile is cool. On Twitter, you talk a lot about, well, remember, time is limited. Remember, what would you do if you knew you didn't have this long to live? There's a real Stoic thought exercise flair to that, right? That's what I took away from it. Yeah,
I mean, those guys. Ryan Holiday turned me on to Stoicism, and Paul Dominic's a guy on Twitter that's really into Stoicism and does a great job. Kind of articulating some of the key tenets there. But I have a lot of admiration for those guys because they navigated challenges way more than I ever will. And yet they still seem to have this great head on their shoulders. And so I just try to think about, especially when it goes back to this perfection thing, and like, why am I getting all bent out of shape about, you know, whatever it is that should not be bothering me and flustering me? I try to think about, you know, another thought exercise that I like is I tell people, find people in your life that you admire.
Yes.
They can be real people. They can be fictional characters. Doesn't matter. And have, you know, sometimes one person can encompass all these things, but it's typically multiple people. And tell yourself, what would this person do in this situation?
Right.
You know, when I'm going into a business meeting, how would Harvey Specter from Suits dress, right? Like, baller, let's dress like Harvey Specter. When I think about like I want to choke this person out because they are so annoying. Well, what would Marcus Aurelius do?
Right.
Well, when I want to give up because the world is beating the shit out of me today, what would Viktor Frankl do?
Yes.
Right? And so it's like, cultivate these people in your lives that you can think about and go to, and what would they do? And sometimes it's, you know, I'm not a super empathetic person. So when I find a situation where I really need to be empathetic, what would my wife do? You know? And so to me, that's a really tremendous exercise that people would benefit from doing.
That is metaphysically stupendous, because you're thinking about, like, what would my wife do? People use that phrase better half. And it's like, literally in this case, you're thinking, what would my external form of empathy do? It's like, what would that, I mean, that is a fascinatingly philosophical perspective there. Wow. Okay. Cool stuff. One thing I also wanted to talk to you about is your emphasis on positive psychology in your account, because you were discussing, well, toxic masculinity. Let's flip the script and look at some positive aspects, some facets of masculinity. I like that because I think we have to address negatives. It's true, but we also have to look at positives, or else we're going to be so ridiculously bogged down and not see a point. So the idea of being centered, of being of having integrity, that's awesome. And you put on there aggressive when necessary. I think a lot of people now need to hear the message of assertiveness, right? The idea of being firm in your boundaries and also appropriately polite, right? And calm about it. We don't get a lot done with pure aggression and the idea of fighting with people and being very emotionally volatile. So I took that, your cool list there to entail that kind of idea of a calm confidence, of an assertiveness.
Yeah, I think drawing, again, all these things are kind of intertwined, right? But drawing from the Stoicism, like, I want to be stoic. I want to be a man at ease.
Yes.
I try to think of, really aggressive situations as I am a bomb, but I hope that my fuse is very long.
Yeah. Good metaphor.
Right. Let's be patient. Let's try to have a discussion. Let's try to, work this out verbally. But I also want you to know that you are not going to take advantage of me, especially if it comes to, physical harm to someone I care about or love, or myself. Right. Yeah. And in that situation, like, I'm going to try to do the things and be prepared to assert myself onto you.
Yes.
And in my mind, I'm sorry, that's not toxic masculinity. That is protecting people that potentially can't protect themselves. That's taking care of the people that we love and care about. And I'm not this big, overwhelming physical force either, but I'm bigger than my wife and my 3-year-old and my 10-month-old. I mean that to be, but it's just like, so many people are fearful and timid, and I don't know that it is who they are, but I don't know that it's a value we should aspire to be. And I think too often, like, the aggression in masculinity is portrayed as this negative. Well, my argument would be that some of these things that people are doing that you are considering toxic masculinity are not masculinity at all. They're harmful things. The book, I'm thinking of it, it's on my shelf behind me, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover.
I've heard of that book.
Is a good book for people to explore. Like, these are traits of masculinity, and this is the positive. They look at everything like a triangle, and it's like, this point of the triangle is the positive and this point is the negative. And if they seep into this, then it's negative. And a lot of times it's because they haven't grown out of adolescence.
Yes.
Which is something that's really problematic, I think, in today's society. We have much less of these, like, we don't go off to war. Like, growing off to war, you grew up. You didn't have a choice. You started families earlier. A lot of times becoming a father forces you to grow up. Mm-hmm. Now I think we have this extended adolescence. And I think a lot of these negative things we see and hear about masculinity are resultant of that, versus having these transformational things that we go through that help kind of hone and sharpen our masculinity into something that's a positive force on society.
Right. I mean, if you're talking about self-defense, that certainly is something that legally and ethically is entailed in defending your family. That's a great thing that you brought up, because I really wanted to hit this, and I'm glad that we're getting into it. You post a lot about pushing oneself out of one's comfort zone, and that's something that I see as such a need now in society. And I am going to give a disclaimer: that doesn't mean put yourself in dangerous interpersonally or physically, the situations, right? It doesn't mean subject yourself to trauma. It does mean that if there's a situation where, let's say, you are nervous about some public speaking, you're not going to die from maybe messing up a few words or having some anxiety there. You're going to overcome it and either see that you didn't die when you did mess up a little bit, or that you exceeded your expectations, right? So that's huge, is these punctuated little developmental crises where you see okay, I expected something negative, but I overcame it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's how do we expose ourselves to these acute stressors that, you know, it's not a chronic problem. You're going to, let's be uncomfortable. Let's push past it. We may fail, but it's not a failure if it's a learning experience. Again, cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Like, I messed up. Well, you know what? I did. Sure, that's fine, but I'm not a failure. I learned from it. I'm not going to make the same mistake again. And that's anything from like, hey, I'm going to go speak to this person of the opposite sex to, hey, I'm scared of heights, so I'm going to go stand on something really tall, to, you know, to your point, public speaking. And public speaking is like, people are more terrified of that than, you know, I think being physically assaulted, which is just insane. Like, do you want to get in the ring with Ed Lattimore, or do you want to do public speaking? Like, I'll do some public speaking for 5,000, please, Alex.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's fascinating to consider that. That seems like such a threat that's at the forefront of people's minds is the speaking, being put on the spot, being analyzed and dissected by others. It's such a foundational fear that we have of being on the spot and failing. You could really get into the psychology of that. But the emphasis that you put on taking charge of our time and being extremely tactical with it, I think, is a great message for people. It really gets to what can we do to overcome the saturation of stimuli that we have now. And that's the biggest thing I think people will really benefit from hearing before they try to do anything else, is be singularly minded. Therapy would call it dialectical behavior therapy, which is a big thing about like embracing opposites. Like you want to change, but you have to accept yourself first. One of the big tenets of that therapy is do everything you do singularly mindfully. So they use the term one-minded. So being focused on that one thing. Right.
Yeah, well, I think too often we get it wrong in the sense, and this probably changes as you get older. People need to go spend more time talking to older folks and their elders. But, you know, we definitely, again, back to we don't have this intergenerational stuff. I think we got to talk to older people because I think they will tell you that they understand something that we do, but we don't yet, is that our time is our most valuable asset, right?
Absolutely.
We spend so much time, we waste so much time, and people are like, oh, money. No, you can always make more money, right? You can never make more time.
Nope.
And so I think, to me, that in of itself will let you know that time is the more valuable asset.
Right.
This is something that we don't realize when you're, 30 years old. You probably don't realize it when you're 50 years old. But I think once you start having kids and you realize how fast they grow up and you just want them to stay tiny and cute, but before they start back talking you. But I think, again, it goes back to like, I love reading these studies of older people and like the things they regret. Because it's like, I wish I wouldn't have worked so hard. Right. I wish I would have talked to my friends and family and stayed in touch better. I wish I would have spent my time more wisely. All these things are things we should learn from them versus there's something to be said for the experience of going through it, but we can also take their benefit of the doubt as well.
Napoleon himself said, space we can recover, time never. And even though he was referring to war, that's such a helpful soundbite that we can extrapolate and apply to our own lives, because we can go redo things that maybe we failed at or whatever we want to look at. But spending time with family and doing the things that matter to you there's nothing like that. So.
Yeah. I mean, also think about, what do you ever regret? Do you ever regret, do you ever say, you know what? I regret that time I spent spending time with my family and visiting with my father. I regret that time I called my grandmother on my commute. No, right? Like, you don't regret workouts. So but do you regret spending 2 hours scrolling Twitter? Probably sometimes. Probably. Not all the time, but sometimes, right? So I think another mental model to use, after I'm done with this, would I regret doing it?
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. That, and then the reason I thought of Tools of Titans is that example you used of 5 years from now. Does this matter? Well, there's one of the Titans in the book discussed the idea of looking at something like widening the scope and remembering how small the planet is compared to how big the universe is. It's this idea of either using time and space as a metric to see what is the ultimate significance of whatever this is that I'm doing, right? Does it matter that I got cut off in traffic today when the Amazon rainforest is burning to the ground? Maybe not. I mean, and it's taking those non-personal stressors out of the way first and seeing that they're not a threat to you on a self-esteem level is probably one of the easier ways to jump in.
Yeah, David Foster Wallace's commencement speech, "This is Water." I watch it once a year for that very reason. Like, oh, this guy cut me off. Well, are they an asshole? Probably. The answer, the truth is probably. But the second you get better at saying, you know what, they were in a hurry because their kid was sick in the back seat and they were trying to get to the hospital. Or, you really care about the environment. Why is this asshole driving this huge SUV?
Right.
Well, do they care about the environment? Probably not. The answer is probably not. But the answer could be, yes, they care immensely, but half of their family died in a car wreck in a small car 10 years ago. And ever since, they've driven this big, huge SUV.
Right.
Again, it goes back to cognitive behavioral therapy. How can we change the narrative we're saying in our head so that we are more positive and happy? Because to your point, we only get to do this once. I always tell people when they're really flustered and worried about something that I don't think should matter, just say, in 100 years, all new people. Because some of that may change. I guess we may enable ourselves to get a little older here in the next little bit. Technology is fascinating, but in general, in 100 years, there's going to be all new people. And, unless they're your direct descendants, for the vast majority of us, those people won't remember your name. And so I think, either go about building a legacy where that's not true, or don't sweat this stuff so much. Like, you get to do it once, do it on your terms.
I absolutely think that's really helpful. Yeah. One thing I wanted to talk about is your good post about that meditation in a very curated, calm form can be helpful, but that ultimately the test is how you can use it under stress. I actually talk about that with clients a lot. Is you don't have to meditate by sitting on a little fluffy pillow. Like, you have to be able to be mindful when things are going on that are negative. And that's what I stress is mindful meditation. So focusing on, okay, this is what I'm noticing in the room right now. I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. Anyone can do that when they're in a meeting that's very stressful. They can center themselves and notice exactly what's going on in the present without leaping ahead to, well, what if?
Right. And so I want to clarify and preface that a lot of people told me that tweet was wrong. And I learned that's
pretty good.
And so I learned, and I didn't articulate it well, but to their point, sitting on the pillow and practicing in your quiet, cool, calm environment probably helps prepare you for, you got to spend some time in the minor leagues before you're ready for the major leagues.
Sure.
So that was a fair critique of that statement. However, for me, what it boiled down to was, I have less admiration for these monks that are sitting on a beautiful mountain with birds chirping and they have no external stimuli and pressures to navigate than I do that same person that took that practice and came and implemented it, walking down a busy New York street, getting bumped into, smelling terrible smells, having a terrible day. How did they then take that time on the cushion in their meditation room and extrapolate it to that really stressful environment?
How do you change something very abstract into something applicable that actually really makes results? No, I agree with you. That's why I wanted to bring it up, is I actually talk with a lot of clients, and I delight in defying expectations of what mindfulness and meditation can be, because so many people are used to the idea of just this pristine quarantining of oneself from stressors in a way that that is just impractical for a lot of clients and a lot of people that I've talked to. So you can start doing that. It's like working out and getting stronger, and then your strength being tested in real life when you're not ready for it. But when you've worked out like that, you're ready to leap in action. That's what really good mindfulness training does. So no, I actually think that tweet brings up a good point of, well, you can talk the talk, but walk the walk when it comes to stuff. Because if you're an active member of society, you probably are going to be tested unless you've really got a meditation routine or you've got some sort of mindfulness thing down that's worthy of your time, that helps you, you're going to crumble, and all that stuff doesn't really work unless it's relevant to you. So,
right. I think the workout analogy is a great one. And I think part of my frustration with meditation, and the point of that tweet too, is like, I think so many people do it to say they do it. It's the same way I read X amount of books, right? It almost becomes a vanity metric. Oh, I'm the kind of person that meditates and reads a lot of books. Yep. Well, do you read the books and learn from what you read? I would rather read the right book 3 times than read 3 terrible books.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the same thing I was trying to get out there with meditation.
It's true.
Do you want to practice it in a way that you use it and make your life better? Or do you just want to be the kind of person that says you practice it?
Right. What is the point? And that's just a vanity claim there. You're right. There's no trait change there. Okay. So as we're wrapping up here, I want to ask you the quintessential Fox Den question here. We got carried into some really good conversation here. I enjoyed it. But I usually say I like to ask this toward the beginning, but it depends on when I think to ask it. If you could meet 3 people, living or dead, who would you meet and why?
Oh gosh, that's so hard.
Yeah, I know, right? But they have to have been real. That's the only caveat there.
They have to have been real.
Yes.
I'm like turning around and I'm looking at my bookshelf because I'm like, which of these authors would I have no good answer to this question. Who have been some other answers that people have said?
Oh boy. So we got Jesus. We have biblical characters. We have famous dictators. We have people have wanted to have like one last conversation with a loved one. Someone brought up wanting to have met Coco Chanel, one of my female guests. Someone brought up the idea of meeting different. Steph Fields, she's pretty cool. In my interview with Steph, she brought up wanting to have met some YouTubers, which is cool. I think it shows where people are with what they want to do, whether it's networking or asking really big questions of figures that we all look up to, or interviewing like a person who's essentially a monster. It's really fascinating with the directions people go with that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Probably Marcus Aurelius. Wouldn't you want to chat with him a bit?
Yeah. I guess I'm really terrible at this question because I extract.
Oh, you're fine.
I extract what is valuable to me from people.
Yeah.
And I don't ever really get into this, like, not that it's idolatry, but I never get into this, like, even as a kid, I was never like, oh, I want to meet these athletes. This is my favorite baseball player, basketball player. And like,
right.
I feel like they put their pants on one leg at a time the same way I do. They're just better at better at hitting baseballs, or they're better at stoicism. I mean, Marcus Aurelius would be a fascinating conversation. Like, how did you navigate these things given all the challenges that you had? And why was your son the way he was? Where did you fail in fatherhood? No, I'm kidding.
You see these great speakers and preachers, and you hear about how their children felt neglected or like their parent wasn't around. Or I think it gets into people can be great at some individual things, or hopefully be great at a lot. But sometimes these characters with really dynamic personalities focus all that so much outward that then you see that maybe in their hearth and home and where it's the most important, they may not give into that environment.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true of really outlier personalities like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. But one of the things I learned from Ramit Sethi is typically those people are actually the exception to the rule, and that if you talk to just your average top performer, those people are typically it angers people, but those people are typically good across the board at their things in life.
Right.
He's like, look, there's definitely exceptions to the rule, like Elon Musk, right? Where they are so cerebral or so, dialed into a certain thing that they do struggle in other aspects of their life. But he's like, it bothers people because
said that
Ramit Sethi.
Okay. And he said that it bothers people that these individuals are good at everything.
Yes.
Well,
and that generally these top performers, because they want to say, well, like, I'm good at this, but I'm not good at this and this and this. So, that's just, you have to sacrifice something. And his thing is like, sure, you are sacrificing things as you climb this ladder. A CEO has less time to spend with his family, but the time he does spend with his family is usually very valuable, good, well-intentioned time. And so his whole thing was like, in general, there are exceptions to the rule, but most top performers are actually top performers across all aspects of their life. So yeah, I would have a drink with Marcus Aurelius.
Ramit was on Tools of Titans. He was in that book.
Yes, and he's an author, and he writes it. I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which sounds scammy, but is actually a very good book. And he's since gotten brought away from personal finance and more into social psychology, and just a really, really sharp guy. He was a guy that was he was an Indian guy who was a typical. His parents were first-generation immigrants, and he graduated Stanford. Very tiny little guy, and has since gotten huge, jacked. He's a guy that now has all aspects of his life really dialed in. So he's a fascinating guy. I also he's acerbic, and I find that very fun.
What were you going to say? You'd meet good old Marcus. Anybody else that you can think of?
I would like to hang out with my great grandfather, my mom's dad's father. He always said he was alive when I was. We overlapped by maybe 3 years. I was 3 or 4 when he passed away, but he always said he would have liked to see the two of us match wits. He was a real prankster, nice. Sharp, not in the academic sense because that wasn't a thing back then. He was a famous horse trainer, but just really sharp, clever guy. So I'll say we'll add him to the mix.
So as we wrap up here, give our listeners a little itinerary of where they can find you, where you'd like them to follow, because you've got some blogs out there.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Stevens.
Yeah, we'll link to that.
My wife and I write at dialedinmen.com. That is the project that we've collaborated on. Just over a year old. Our kids are 3 years and 10 months, so we don't get to write as often as we'd like, but that's something we're working on. And as these kids get older, we'll have more time to write, so that'll be fun, good resource for people. And then I've been writing at ryanstevens.me now for 10 years. Don't go too far back in those archives, but one really great resource there is my book reviews, because they are not traditional, this is a good book or a bad book or why. It is really, for example, Cal Newport's Deep Work, really impactful book for me. Read that, and the post about that is 90 impactful things I learned from this book. So it ends up being like cliff notes of these big impactful books for me.
Beautiful. This has been amazing. Very productive interview here.
No, I again, thanks for having me, Jeremy. I really appreciated the conversation. I think we hit on a lot of key societal phenomenons that I think people would benefit from. And so I hope people find it helpful. And if somebody listening to this did find it helpful, please send me an email or reach out or ping me and let me know. And especially if you have follow-up questions, I'm always happy to help.
Yep. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening.